participants, presenters, and special guests to a public meeting presenting the 30% design of the Touchet Valley Trail as prepared by Anderson, Perry and Associates. The meeting is specifically designed to inform the public about the trail, and no action will be taken regarding its construction or not. During the meeting, you will hear from other agencies who have experience managing similar trails. You will also hear from another law enforcement agency regarding their experience with trails. A preliminary economic assessment of the trail on the Dayton and Waitsburg communities will be presented. Past concerns raised by the public will also be addressed. The presentation will likely last about 2 hours and is packed full with information of interest to all. At the end of the presentation, a question and answer session will be opened. So I invite you all to sit back and absorb the information that will be presented. Enjoy. I am followed by Commissioner Brown, who will provide some details of the format of the presentation. Sean.
Thank you, Earl, and welcome everyone to our growing meeting. I see we're running about 64 participants. I wanted to just lay out some of the opportunities that are available to the public and other participants during the meeting. If you're accustomed to using Zoom, you'll know that there's a chat box. I want to let everyone know that the chat will not be monitored during the meeting, but next to that, there's a question and answer, and that will be monitored. So if you're new to Zoom, scroll all the way to the bottom of your screen with your mouse or to the top or side to side, depending how your individual Zoom is set up. But on one of those sides, you'll find your command bar and you'll see a Q&A button. You are welcome to type in questions at any time during the meeting. Those questions will be reviewed in some cases by the presenters during the time they're not presenting, and they may even provide written answers during the meeting while they are not directly presenting themselves. Those questions that will be left unanswered at the end will be offered up to the panelists, given as much time as is available for the meeting at the end. We have a very full agenda, which is why we're holding the questions and answers to the end for the most part, is we have many guests coming from various surrounding counties and beyond to tell us about how trails and other issues have worked in their areas. I also want to remind you that the drawings are available online at portofcolumbia.org. They will be there until May 12th. A recording of this full broadcast will be posted, available to view online or at the port office, and all of the comments can be entered until May 12th, and all will be reviewed and handled by the Port Commission members. We thank you for your attendance, and thank you to each of the presenters for joining us tonight.
Back to
Thank
Jenny.
you, Sean. Thank you, Earl. And I want to thank all of the people that helped put this presentation together tonight. There is a great steering committee that has been working for months to put this together, and I really appreciate their dedication. I'm going to talk about economic impact forecast. And first, I'm going to give a little bit of a review of the economy of Dayton over the last 40 years or so. Each of the governments in our community has a different purpose. Cities provide water, sewer, roads, and public amenities like parks and pools. Counties provide law and justice, mental health, public health, roads, and public amenities like fairgrounds and parks. Libraries provide books, hospital district provides healthcare, schools provide education. What do ports provide? The Washington State Constitution designates ports as economic development agency. The Port of Columbia's mission is to maximize public resources and private investment to create jobs, provide infrastructure, and maintain and improve the economic vitality of Columbia County and its communities. If you look at this tax chart, you can see that the port is one of the smallest taxing districts in our county. Ours is the small pink sliver at the bottom left of the pie chart. We generate almost half of our income from private lease revenue, and we have been successful in securing grant funds that would go to other communities in the state if we didn't take advantage of them. Please note that no new taxes are proposed for the trail project. No matter what you've read, no new taxes are proposed. Our economy has undergone big structural changes over the past 40 years. We've lost green pea and asparagus canning. We've lost Columbia Cutstock, a custom window frame manufacturer. Logging has declined and sawmills are gone. We've lost on-farm employment due to mechanization. As ag input costs have increased and the price of commodities hasn't, ag businesses have consolidated in order to survive, many leaving the community and taking with them the tax revenue that used to be generated for our cities. Some of you may remember when you could buy a car or a combine in Dayton. Think about the tax revenue that was generated with those kinds of sales that is now lost. Downtowns have suffered from these structural changes, as you can see in this picture from Dayton's downtown in 1980. Not just here either, but across America in rural communities. Luckily, our community leaders recognized this and started the work of diversifying our economy in the early 1980s by continuing to take advantage of the natural resource base, but also expanding to new industries and building a recreation and tourism trade. The Port's Rock Hill Industrial Park was also born in the 1980s and now houses 9 buildings with 14 business tenants, contributing to the economic health of our community. Over the past 15 years or so, substantial investments in Columbia County have created jobs, increased the tax base, and improved the economic health of the community. Wind farms have created high-paying jobs and new revenue for landowners. Seneca Seed Processing has prospered and grown to about 50 employees. Columbia Pulp currently employs about 80 people and expects to be back over 100 employees in the next few months. Bluewood just finished their best season in years, and our hospital district has survived the threats to rural health care and is currently the top employer in the county. Unfortunately, this success has not translated to our downtown or our retail sector. We've kept expecting it to, but it just hasn't happened. The hospitality, service, and retail sectors are hurting and were even before COVID-19. 2007 is really the last year we saw most of the buildings in our downtown full, a wide variety of retail. What's changed since then? A lot, but most of it can be attributed to the growth in online shopping and the significant retail leakage occurring as people travel out of the county to shop. Counties with a Costco have the highest retail sales per capita in the state, and Columbia County has one of the lowest. So can we count on local citizens alone to support the small business sector here, especially the hospitality and retail sector? It doesn't seem like it. During the early pandemic, when people were asked to stay close to home, one of our local retail businesses had the highest month in sales since owning that business. The minute Walla Walla businesses opened back up, sales went down. So the idea that we don't need tourism or outside dollars to support our downtown, our hospitality, and our retail sector is not accurate. This is why the Port supports building a trail. Small businesses are the backbone of America, and things don't stay the same. Our downtown recovered from the decline in the 1980s, only to be hit with new challenges today. The hospitality, retail, and service sectors are so important for providing employment, generating local tax revenue, and adding to the attractiveness and quality of life of our community. They need help. Millions in federal and state tax dollars come to our county every year to support agriculture, healthcare, roads, streets, and more. The Port of Columbia believes that small businesses in our community deserve the same kind of support. Why build a trail? To continue our mission to maximize public resources. Maximize public resources through grants and tax dollars, and leverage private investment through small business growth to create an environment that supports jobs, provide infrastructure by building a recreational trail, and maintaining and improving those investments for the economic vitality of Columbia County and its communities. So now we'll do a very quick overview of the economic forecast. The information shared today was prepared at the request of the Port of Columbia and the Palouse RTPO. Because this trail is not yet constructed, the consultant has used data from existing trails and economic modeling to forecast the proposed benefits of this trail. The study looks at the impact on the regional economy as this trail connects 2 cities and encompasses part of 2 counties, and our functional economy is much larger than our county. It's actually about 4 counties. Please note that this is a very preliminary study and a final product will be completed in October of this year. Also note that the consultant, who has been doing economic modeling in the region for many years, says that similar trails in Eastern Washington that are now operational are proving these forecasts to be accurate. The economic forecast is based on construction of a 10-foot wide asphalt trail, 9.7 miles long, at a roughly estimated cost of $10.38 million. Yes, that is a lot of money, but let me tell you that crossing the Touchet River twice with new pedestrian bridges is not cheap and have added to the cost of the trail. However, we've been hearing requests from the public for years for a new pedestrian bridge in downtown Dayton, so this project satisfies that wish. The following information also assumes a Touchet Valley Trail visitor count of 100,000 annually. Please note that does not mean the number of people. It means the number of uses. 8,961 visitor parties are projected to be out from outside the 4-county region, so from quite a distance away. Each visitor party will spend about $72.66 on eating and drinking, groceries, fuel, and other expenditures. The temporary construction economic footprint of the Touchet Valley Trail is proposed at approximately $11.7 million, supporting 73 jobs for 1 year and $462,740 in new state and local taxes during construction. And before you discount the benefit of short-term construction project, go talk to one of our hotels or restaurants. They can tell you exactly how much they benefit when we have construction projects in the area. The annual economic footprint of the Touchet Valley Trail from new retail activity, telecommuters, and visitor spending is $1.32 million in new spending in our downtowns, supporting 12 jobs and $107,532 in new state and local taxes. Those contributions include the multiplier impacts from backward linkages to the local economy and from the impact of resulting employee and consumer spending. How would new jobs be created? If trail visitors increase sales at local businesses, those businesses may need more help and may add employees. So, is it worth it to build a trail? The preliminary economic impact study and data from existing trails says that it is. Observing the success of the work done here over the past 40 years says that it is. Investing in infrastructure that will generate new revenue for our hotels, restaurants, brew pubs, wineries, and maybe even a new bike shop is worth it to the Port of Columbia. And it's part of our mission to support the economy of our communities. So now I'm going to turn it over to Joyce Smith with the Waitsburg Commercial Club and the Blue Mountain RC&D. She has a special economic presentation of her own.
Thank you, Ginny. Well, I just got back from Boston, and one of the things in Boston and the communities outside of Boston, the suburbs, they're interconnected by a tremendous network of trails, and it was a lot of fun. So today I'm broadcasting from Nancy's Garden Center here on 124 and at the near our trailhead. And with me is Doug Below, who co-owns Nancy's Garden Center with his sister Janet. And he's going to start our presentation in Waitsburg with his personal experiences with with trails and biking. So Doug, can you see there? There you go. Got it?
Yep. Hello. So we started the business about 3 years ago, and we're trying to find ways to help support the business. Right now, of course, we do a lot of foliage, but we do need other revenue streams. So several years ago, I did a long hike on the Pacific Crest Trail, and I realized that culture was really a great culture. And I saw the impacts that the hikers had made in the small towns on the trail. Some towns are actually supported annually by the hikers, and the culture was great. And so what I wanted to do here, I'm also an avid bicyclist, and I've bicycled thousands of miles over the years. So our idea here to help us at the Garden Center in Waitsburg is to work with long distance bicyclists. And there's several trails, one coming from Walla Walla, one coming from Tri-Cities that go through Waitsburg for long distance bicyclists. As far as the trail itself, I think the biggest impact there would be the bicyclists from Walla Walla. During the summer, I can see downtown, there are groups of bicyclists coming from Walla Walla, and they will be stacked, 6, 7 people sometimes standing downtown with their bicycles, outside the grocery store. But there was really no area for them to rest, to cool down, to take a break. So we want to implement something for the bicyclists at the Garden Center. There will be a break area, a misting area so they can cool down. With that, we put in a soda machine. But what I want to do is, when they spend time here, I want them to utilize the other small businesses in town. Here at the Garden Center, we want to have a place for them to stage. Also here, we'll have a repair station that will be of no charge to them. There will be an option for long distance bicyclists. They will be able to spend the night here. We do have a few areas, and that we would be on site. There would be on site management for the full duration. Any long distance bicyclists or a small group from Walla Walla would be fine. The benefit of the trail there is I see a round trip from Walla Walla to Waitsburg now on a bicycle. You're looking at 40 miles. So an avid bicycler, it's going to be around 4.5 to 5 hours. They do stop down here and they get small snacks and stuff. But I think with the extension to Dayton, now that's going to add about 2 hours to their trip. And I believe since it would be off the freeway, they would be very likely to continue that trip to Dayton off the highway. A lot of them use the back roads now. It's a loop. A lot of them don't take the main highway, but they'll take the back roads, the lower middle Waitsburg Road and the middle Waitsburg Road. But I believe with the extension to Dayton, that will extend their trip. I would guess around 2.5 hours. But once I believe the bicyclists start pushing, being on their bicycles 8 hours or more, I believe they'll be then looking for somewhere to stay in the area. They'll be looking to stop for larger lunches and larger dinners and just wanting to spend the night in the towns. So that's what we want to kind of promote here for them, is just give them access to that. And, I think that extension of the trail, we would be able to pull in some bicyclists here in Waitsburg. And they would be able to spend the night, of course, for a fee, and that will help our business. And at some point, like I said, they'll have a free station to work on their bicycles. But at some point, we would integrate basic things they would need, like inner tubes or repair. And we also want to provide a shuttle service. So that way, if someone's hurt for a fee, they can get back to Walla Walla. They can get back to Tri-Cities. If they need gear, that type of thing, we could shuttle them. I think the biggest impact would be in Dayton, because I think when they hit that halfway mark and they've been on their bicycle for 6 hours, that's probably where they want to stay, have their dinner or their lunches, depending on what time of day they start. But we want to be here somewhere in the middle and, just help promote the bicycle trail. My experience on long distance hiking is very, very beneficial for the hikers. And it created an atmosphere when there was an area that would be hiker specific. They would congregate, and when they're off the trail, a lot of people travel back to those areas just to relive their experience. So I want to make something like that available in Waitsburg. So even if they're not on their bicycles, they want to come back and relive that experience and maybe do a smaller bicycle or just hit the trail between here and Dayton or something to that effect. So I appreciate you giving me the time for the input, and good luck to everyone.
Thanks. Well, that kind of knocks it out of the park. And I just want to kind of wrap up with a reminder that trails do transform the economic fabric and the collective identity of our towns. Our towns are the sum, Dayton and Waitsburg were the sum of our adjacencies, and we can't flourish without recognizing the benefits of adjacencies to our communities. They matter for many reasons, but more simply, they matter because they create destination connectivity. A couple of years ago, Visit Walla Walla and then Director Ron Williams had a promotional push to encourage people to spend more than just the weekend, to extend their stay to the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, possibly, even into a week. When they visit Walla Walla or they visit Dayton, there's not 5 days worth of entertainment, but that's when they expand out and visit the outlying communities. Trails are an active transportation asset for our communities. And they're a bucket list destination for bicyclists and walkers because people desire footpaths. And creating them is what we're doing to revitalize our communities in a post-industrial economy. Economic revitalization projects that focus squarely on the creation of outdoor recreation projects successfully defeat the one and done tourist. Bluewood's a great example of that, of a successful business plan for repeat businesses, because when you're working to retain a customer base is easier than constantly trying to attract new customers, and it's cheaper. And trails help articulate a vision of values that focus on clean, green, and safe. They hit lots of buttons on what cities and neighborhood priorities are: increased access, connectivity, and healthy lifestyle. The process of including trails in transportation plans that are diverse and equitable isn't a new concept. We now understand just how essential safe and equitable transportation is for all of our citizens. Since 1991, more than $15 billion have been allocated for trails nationally, and states are now including millions of dollars in their capital budget for trails and using this significant funding that has come from the federal transportation alternative monies that started in 1977. More monies were added in 81, 91, 98, 2003, and so forth. President Reagan signed the first law that saved corridors for interim hiking and biking use in 1981, and Washington State Senator Warren Magnuson sponsored bills that led to alternative transportation. Give me just a minute here as I page down in my notes, because otherwise I'm going to forget what I said. Let's see. Well, I guess I'm not going to get down in my, there we go. Okay, so trails are what we're doing to make our communities more livable and safe. And trails create more opportunities for people to get out and recreate. Stakeholders in our adjacent communities understand that we've historically been close-knit, adjacent, and codependent. And the Touchet Valley Trail is a global vision. Waitsburg businesses know that. They plan for bicyclists and walkers as they create their business plans and menus. So I would leave you with just this thought. If you could do your job from anywhere, where would it be? Cities with regional transportation alternatives stand up to any competition. So I'm going to hand off from wonderful walkable Waitsburg and wish that you all can take a hike. So thank you very much for being here tonight. Thanks for the opportunity, Jenny.
Thank you, Joy. Okay, so Andrea, you are next, and it looks like my slides went back, so sorry about that. Get us to the right slide.
Number 14, yes. Thank you so much. My name is Andrea Beckmüller-Behringer. I represent the Walla Walla Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization, one of the many organizations involved in the Blue Mountain Region Trails planning. In 2016 through 2018, with support from the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance, the Blue Mountain Region Trails Plan really put a lot of things in motion, including the Touchet Valley Trail. This 1.5-year effort was collaborative among local cities, counties, health departments, ports, state, federal resource agencies, state resource agencies, and additional entities, all working together to develop a region-wide system of non-motorized trails and transportation for walkers and bikers. The goal was to enhance community connections, create better pedestrian and bicycle networks in built-up areas, and also develop trail routes that connect the region's communities as well as the natural treasures. During the first round of that project outreach, we gathered almost 1,000 ideas regarding potential connections from the public. We had well over 400 folks attending public workshops there. We took all of those ideas and went and talked to our local jurisdictions to create a proposed region-wide network. We then, as part of a second round of public outreach, brought this network back, and the public ranked what they thought would be their highest preference to really get this moving forward, because we knew that we were not going to be able to create this entire system all at once. And then during a final round of outreach, which was conducted online, this draft blueprint of a network, a region-wide network of trails, was presented to the public to really get some nitty-gritty information on this is a good corner, this is not a good corner, here should be a light, there should be a sign. So really fine, detailed information. Throughout this entire process, the Touchet Valley Trail really rose to the forefront as one of the regional favorites. Around the same, shortly after the Blue Mountain Region Trails Plan was completed, in early 2019, the stakeholder steering committee for the Touchet Valley Trail was formed and began to meet monthly in order to move the Touchet Valley Trail forward. The regional Blue Mountain Region Trails Plan was really used as a springboard for several project-specific grant applications, and the steering committee was successful in getting 2 grants. One was with the WashDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian Program, and the other one was another grant, another technical assistance grant from the National Park Service, and I will talk about each one of those separately. In May 2019, the Touchet Valley Trail project applied for a $37,000 grant from the Washington State Department of Transportation. And that money was to go for the design of the multi-use path between Dayton and Waitsburg, which is really the funding base for the effort that is being presented to you today. While awaiting the WashDOT grant award decision, the Touchet Valley Trail Steering Committee did not sit idle. They conducted a June 2019 listening session with adjacent landowners. The addresses were lifted from the Geographic Information System of Columbia County. It was really an effort trying to reach out to get direct landowner feedback on this Touchet Valley Trail proposal. In September of 2019, 2 public meetings were held to share some preliminary information about this trail. One was held in Dayton, the other one was held in Waitsburg. During the meeting, stations were set up around the room so that after the presentation, attendees could ask very specific questions and give individual comments. All of the comments were logged, and it was highly encouraged to submit any kind of questions and comments for further consideration as this trail was moving forward. Finally, in fall of 2019, Washington State said, yes, we will give you the money for the design. So this grant, the $637,000 grant application, is set to cover the design work up to the 90% stage. And I know today we're talking about 30%, but there's more to come. And of course, the second grant application that I mentioned earlier, that is the National Park Service Technical Assistance Grant. This really came into play when the concept was fleshed out for this Touchet Valley Trail. The National Park Service helped the steering committee pull together community representatives, multiple Washington State University and University of Washington students, as well as Washington chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architect Professionals, who really helped put on a design workshop which was held in October of 2019. And the workshop closed out with a public presentation of the initial concept ideas. And ultimately, the final concept plan was completed in April of 2020. Now, this concept plan was, of course, shared with the design firm Anderson Perry Associates, which integrated not only the conceptual idea, but also the public feedback received up to date through the early listening session, then the 2 public meetings as part of the workshop presentation to the public. And these comments were really taken to heart. They initiated some design changes as the feedback was analyzed. And of course, all of that work brings us to today, where we're looking at the 30% design drawings, which are being shared with you today. And with that, I'll turn the word over to the Anderson Perry Associates team.
Thank you, Andrea. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Hansen with Anderson Perry, civil engineer on the project. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 30% design plans here, and then Ken Van Voorhees with SPVV is going to speak a little bit further about the plans. I guess to continue on the story that Andrea just mentioned, when the concept plan was completed, or as the concept plan was being completed, a firm out of Eugene, GeoTierra, was hired to fly the corridor of the trail, the approximately 10-mile corridor, to collect aerial survey data and aerial photographs. That information is what the background of the 30% plans, which, as Commissioner Brown mentioned earlier, and I'll just remind you, are on the port's website, can be downloaded. We will be going through pieces of the plan and just an overall highlight, but you'll have an opportunity to look at them in more detail if you download them from the website. So with the information of the aerial survey in hand, Anderson Perry survey crews then were sent out along the trail to survey in property corners, quarter sections, section corners, to really collect field information on the existing property monumentation that exists along the right-of-way of the railroad and the trail corridor. As a piece of that overall background map, we did an extensive, and ongoing title search with Title I out of Dayton. The right-of-way that the railroad exists in currently is a combination of 2 railroads, and so there are over the 10 miles. We have obtained and reviewed several hundred documents, from right-of-way deeds, acquisition deeds, quitclaim deeds, to determine the location of the port's right-of-way. The intent of this search was to show the right-of-way based on the available deeds and monumentation. If anyone is watching this presentation and they feel like they have a document that is not reflected in these plans, we would appreciate if you would provide that to the port so that we can review it as part of our ongoing title search. Through the title search, there's 2 different ways that the right-of-way is defined along the corridor. There are many deeds that call out specific property corner locations, section lines, section corners, physical monuments that can be surveyed and have been picked up in the field. And then as you go further back in time, the deeds are referenced, the property is referenced to the center line of the railroad track. So throughout the plans, you'll see two different designations for right-of-way lines. You'll see right-of-way lines that are defined by deeds that are specific property monument corners, and you'll see right-of-way lines that are delineated as an offset from the center line of the railroad track. That is the two different types of right-of-way definition that have been taken from the deeds and the property searches and put into this base map. Once we were able to put together the base map with the right-of-way location, the survey information, we've had and taken that, put it together with the concept plan. We have gone through since spring, summer 2020, at least monthly meetings with the steering committee, with both cities of Dayton and Waitsburg staff, both on site, over Zoom. We've had phone calls with Walla Walla County, field meetings with Columbia County and Dayton. We've had multiple conversations with Washington State Parks. The coordination has been significant to take the concept plan, take the base map, and create a trail location within the corridor that meets all of the desires of the various jurisdictions, or the comments from the concept plan. We've tried to take all of those things and incorporate them into the 30%. Will be the springboard for us to work our way through 60% and 90% design to reach a construction plan set. And then the last thing I'll talk about is we've had a kickoff meeting with Washington State DOT staff related to environmental permitting. So that would include cultural resources, critical areas, NEPA checklists. That's an ongoing process that will continue through the construction plan, but we are getting documentation in line for those environmental permitting aspects. So with that, I think what you're all seeing is what's really the third plan sheet of the 30% civil plans, but it's really the first of 51 sheets that go down the nearly 10-mile corridor. And so what I'm going to talk about for the next couple minutes is, if you're not used to looking at plans, what you'll see on here, what information there is. Again, I'm not going to walk through all of the 51 plan sheets, but I will hit some of the highlights of the plan, and then I'll pass it on to Ken, and he's going to talk about a little more detail in some of the trailheads and other high points along the trail. So every one of the 51 plan sheets that goes down the trail has a plan view on top, a profile on the bottom. The profile for the 30% design plan shows the existing elevation along the trail corridor. It will eventually show the final elevation, or the proposed elevation of the trail along that corridor, as the plans proceed to 60% and 90%. Typical notes are on the left, but the vast majority of the information, I'll zoom in, is up here in the plan view. So what you should see, you will see on each plan view the gray strip that is the proposed trail location. You will see existing roads labeled. The existing railroad track is the line with the crosshatch along it. You will see 1-foot contours from the survey, the big hillside here coming down the hill. You'll see existing concrete pads and buildings, power, and you will see the surveyed right-of-way line on either side of the trail as you go sheet by sheet. So I will point, and the last thing I'll point out before I start taking us through a little bit of plan set is the right-of-way has been established using survey deeds. The property lines shown on the north and the south of the right-of-way are from the county GIS. So, sorry. I apologize for that. The property lines shown on the north and south of the right-of-way are from county GIS. GIS is an approximation of property lines. It is not intended to be a survey line. It is not accurate within the right-of-way, and so what you'll see outside of the right-of-way is close to the property lines, but GIS is not intended to be official legal property lines. And so as you look at the property lines adjacent to the right-of-way, just understand that those are not surveyed lines. They are GIS. They are there for informational purposes only. So now let's talk about the trail. So we're at the west end of the trail and we're tying into the sidewalk north of the bridge along Main Street in Waitsburg. And the trail is proposed to come up to the trailhead in Waitsburg, which you'll see on each of the plans, a rectangle with a designation to an L sheet. Those are the landscape sheets, and in a moment, Ken will take over and talk to you a little bit about the trailheads and the other things along the trail that we've highlighted in this 30% plan set. So going from west to east, I'm gonna skip over some sheets, but the next sheet shows the portion of the trail where the existing drainage ditch next to the railroad is proposed to be either a box culvert or a culvert with the trail on top. This is a portion of the trail that we're working on understanding how we make that design work, and that will be fleshed out in the 60% design plans. Continuing further to the east, the next kind of major location along the trail takes us a few hundred feet down the trail where we get to Huntsville. At Huntsville, it was decided by the concept plan and the steering committee group that the best alignment for the trail, it would be to move the existing railroad to the north, further north in the right-of-way, and have the trail through this portion of Huntsville occupy the space currently occupied by the railroad. This would give further separation from the existing businesses to the trail, and overall the concept plan and the design felt like this was the best solution through this somewhat congested portion of the trail corridor. And that continues for several hundred feet. Again, we're just going down the plan view from west to east through Huntsville until you see we tie the railroad, the proposed railroad realignment back in, and the trail continues. I will highlight at this point, the trail does move from north to south across the railroad in a few places. Those are generally based on site constraints. The overall goal of the concept and the trail was to minimize the number of crossings, but there are several places throughout the trail corridor that crossings were needed for various reasons, some of which were uses on one side or the other, or physical traits within the right-of-way that needed to be avoided. Moving down from Huntsville, the next point I'd like to highlight is, again, a new pedestrian bridge over the Touchet River to the north of the existing railroad bridge and the highway bridge. This is another point where Ken's going to focus on in a moment. So I will just keep moving down the plans. As we get to the state park, as I mentioned, we had several meetings with state parks about how to integrate the trail into the park program, how to make the two interface, and the best way for the trail and the trail users and the park users to be able to enjoy that space. And this is that location. And again, you'll see with this, as you're looking through the plans at home, if you see these notations, you can pop over to the landscape plans and you'll see a blow up here. The next point along the trail that I'm going to highlight is as the trail goes around Dumas Station Winery. This was another point on the concept plan that there was focus on how the trail might provide some benefit to Dumas Winery and also the trail users, that interaction. As you continue on, you get another interaction with Blue Mountain Station, which is off of this view to the south, but at the north end of Blue Mountain Station parking lot area, there's a trailhead proposed, and Ken is going to show us a little bit about that in a minute. And then finally, the trail reaches Commercial Street. Technically not quite in Dayton, but at the fairgrounds, and then Commercial Street flows into the city limits. In our coordination with Columbia County, City of Dayton, it was decided that Commercial Street would be rebuilt so that we would keep the same amount of travel lane, but we would also add a rolled curb and the path to the north side of the right-of-way. So you'll see along Commercial Street, both in the county in front of the fairgrounds, and as it travels into Dayton, you see this road section with an asphalt path separated by a rolled curb. And when we get to the end of Commercial Street, we hit our second crossing of the Touchet River. This again, another pedestrian scale bridge north of the existing railway bridge. Once we cross the bridge, we're now tying into existing sidewalks and historic Dayton, where we come to the east end of the trail near the Dayton Historical Depot and the existing park, and this will be the Dayton Trailhead. That's a high-level overview of the engineering plans and what you're going to see in that set of plans. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Ken to talk about the character of the trail and some of the opportunities at these locations I've pointed out.
Great, Brian. Thank you so much. And I just want to thank everyone for attending. As you can tell from all the speakers, there's a lot of information that's gone into this plan set. So I get to have the opportunity to kind of provide the character and the theme, if you will, of the trail, which is taken from all the information provided. And excited about this is 30%. Want to remind everyone of that, and that your comments are important, that we'll integrate those in as much as is possible. And I'm going to try to hit on some of the details that you'll see in this. It is not the entire plan set, as Brian mentioned, but we'll hit on those details for where we're at. So with context, we're looking at the locations where the trails interact with the communities as connection points. They're on both ends. The connection points allow users to get in. I will say that there's many connection points. There's a lot of small ones along the way at road crossings, so it's always going to be open to access. There was one of the questions that somebody asked about that. But in Waitsburg, we want to position the trail located between the Touchet River and Mill Race Road, and also recognize the historic significance of the mill site. So the trail, as Brian mentioned, starts at the end of the main street and then goes along the south edge of an industrial area. I also want to point out that these trails will serve, as earlier speakers have talked about, alternative transportation. It really does allow walkers, bicyclists, and all those that want to get out and recreate a great opportunity, whether in one community or the other. So it's really important that we understand the various forms of transportation. So Brian, if you don't mind jumping to there we go. This gives us a perspective view or some illustrations of what the trail connection in Waitsburg might look like. We wanted to provide a separation buffer between the industrial uses along this road with trees and an existing fence line. So there'll be a separation using bollards and fencing material to create that physical barrier so users can't get out into the what would be a call it industrial loop. The improvements included in these locations on all of them generally will include either a restroom facility of some sort. In this case, for most of them, we're proposing at 30% a shelter type structure that would house portable restrooms so that they're one of the biggest expenses in trails is restroom facilities and those associations with cleaning and maintenance of that. And this way it defers that to a contract base and is only needed when the trails are used in a significant manner and or based on the community's needs within the adjacent connection. So example, Waitsburg might have a big event coming up. They might put the restrooms out there and use it for that or during the summer months, but it allows it to be seasonal. Other improvements at all connections will be parking, and in that parking is included is ADA parking stalls so that we give access to all. As these things are built and funded, we need to recognize that all individuals of every ability should try to be able or should be allowed the opportunity to recreate and get out and use these infrastructures. So that is an important element. The key pieces and the details will include those things, and you'll see shortly what I'm talking about. The signage is really important, and we've heard from a lot of stakeholders and or concerned individuals about how do we sign this. We're trying to be consistent, and we are proposing signage that's consistent with the business plan for both communities as well as the region. We're also being consistent in hearing that this is a trail that fits within the agriculture environment, and the signage allows us an opportunity to allow users to be aware of what they're entering. In this case, the ag business. So I look at it, it's no different than signage in an urban environment. You need to be aware of what's going on. There are signage opportunities in these situations to be aware of the rural nature of this trail and where it passes. So you'll see in some of the details, they're not in this set, but when you get online, you'll see some of that detail we're talking about for opportunities for signage. Also included in these signs is just real quickly, the opportunity to talk about the culture and historic nature. So with that, we will progress our trip down this trail to bridge number 1, which is the first crossing of the Touchet River. And what we're trying to signify in the plan view is that its adjacency to the historic or the railroad bridge of unique character and style will be mimicked, and we are going to see that elsewhere. The crossing of the Touchet River is very unique. It's one of those elements that make people or drive people to use the trail. It's kind of a destination, and we believe that's really important that we recognize how that is. In this situation, its proximity to the state parks makes it a nice, simple destination for the short-term user, we'll call it. And then here is a representation. Like I said, when we want to bring the culture and style of the trail and bring that consistency through the communities, we were choosing a heavy truss or a span bridge that mimics the railroad bridge in its historic context with its trusses. And you'll see another shape when we get to the other bridge, but we're trying to balance those and marry that together. You'll also see in here the separation between the trail and keeping what we call or consider protection. And that will be along the trail at 30%. It will be in site-specific locations, but at bridge locations and some major crossings, we want to make sure that the user is directed to where we want them to go and you can use these crossings safely. You'll also see in this bridge illustration the markers that represent to the user that they're approaching a change in trail, in this case, a change in bridge from the asphalt. So there's markers on either end that whether you're on a bicyclist, a stroller, or whatever the recreation activity is, you'll see that there's a change coming ahead of you, and that's important because it's consistent throughout the entire trail project. We also are including the character markers on either end of the bridge. In my mind, it allows us to talk about the geologic significance of the valley. It also allows us to talk about the environmental elements and tell the story of the region, you know, Lewis and Clark coming through here, those kinds of elements that are really important to people and getting them out there to use this. So as we progress from the bridge number 1 over the Touchet River, we now are at the Lewis and Clark State Park. And we've worked very well, as Brian mentioned. We've had a number of meetings with them. We want to recognize in context that this trailhead, or excuse me, this connection is associated but doesn't just pull away from the state park itself. So it is truly located on the port's right of way. We've integrated it well with the state parks in their future expansion needs to allow parking for both the trail user and the state parks, as well as siting it so that the highway individual coming knows that they're reaching this important connection, because it is about the middle of the project. And as I mentioned earlier, the proximity to bridge number 1 makes it a very nice, a simple walk for the, I'm going to call the casual user. You know, it might be the family that comes out with small children. They can park, jump on the trail, head east to the bridge, see the river, come back, and it's a very comfortable pass. Also, the other elements that we wanted to make sure that all these, again, have the ADA parking access. This particular one, the uniqueness is the restroom here, working with parks, may be a vault or maybe a flush toilet, depending on parks and some logistics. Again, it's 30%. We haven't vetted that completely out, but there is an opportunity where it will match their season and their use very nicely. I want to also mention that the signage, or the material, excuse me, at all these locations are respective of the communities they serve, but consistent for management for the port. So in this case, the restroom would most likely have stonework that's complements the same stonework that's associated with the structures at the state park. The sign or the kiosk, which tells people the information relative to the trail, whether it's a historic, talking about the state park, or telling users of just trail rules, for example, is important. And these things will carry through as a consistent, unified approach, but allow the individual locations to tell their story, whether it's historical, cultural, or just trail user information. And now we'll move to the Blue Mountain Station. And again, in Plan View, Brian was, I think, did a good job of showing how this is an extension of the Blue Mountain business development, and that this is site located in such a way that it uses the existing parking. It allows for a little, some additional parking, as well as expansion to the property to the south for the Blue Mountain Station. And it really makes a good connection. Some of the key elements at this particular trail connection are the restrooms. Again, a restroom structure that would house portable restrooms. A picnic area that's associated between the parking area and the trail. We're wanting to use natural materials such as boulders and large stones to keep separation, the vehicle separated from the trail, but still allow access easily onto the trail and or the users. Let's see. The signage in here, again, is very consistent. They're generally at these connections. In the middle of this picture, you'll see a kiosk that allows, again, for that context. It may say that the Blue Mountain Station offers this services, or that it was created for such, or that the state parks is further down the line, or you're close to, the Dayton, the fairgrounds is the other direction and giving a distance. I see these locations, and I think the group as a whole has an opportunity for that alternative transportation. Say the fairgrounds are very busy, someone could park, stroll down along the trail, go to the fairgrounds, come out, back to their vehicle, and not have to deal with any congestion that might happen on the east end during those times in the season where it's very busy. So these really do provide a great connection point for that. As Brian mentioned, we were moving towards what I'm calling the West Commercial, I guess to be the bridge connect. So this is bridge number 2 at Dayton, and I call it the west end of the I think a study called it the historic pearls. But this connection is really critical. It does allow access to the river along the property to the north. There's an opportunity there. There's what I would consider kind of a loose access that's being used by people, and this might formalize that so it's more controlled. We also have to take into context its adjacency to the existing railroad bridge and the connections. Thank you, Brian. The adjacency to the bridge and its character and style. I mentioned before that the trusses that were in the first bridge were influencing the style of these pedestrian bridges. This one, the arching aspect is what we looked at to compare those. We're looking closely at opportunities for keeping the materials the same for maintenance purposes, but yet having a style and character. So I think a good combination of the arch and the truss really allows that to happen. Again, at these locations, there's the opportunity to talk the river and its elements, and I'm sure there's a historic context. I know in the concept plan, there was a lot of discussion of this particular area and how it's been used over time, whether it's the native tribes or Chinatown or the development of Dayton. There's a significant amount of information at this particular location that those signage points will really provide a great opportunity. I want to also mention that at the end that also sets the tone for the trail user and the connection to the fairgrounds, because at this point it starts to transition to a more urban environment, but at the same time it starts to lend itself to being a trail. So this is a unique little transition portion of it. I think has great opportunity and helps alleviate the foot traffic going across that active railroad bridge that we see significantly. I think we were told there were a number of users that access across there because it's convenient, but the reality is it's still an active railroad line. So this queue is critical. So now we're looking at the east end of the commercial business street. And one of the opportunities that we know Commercial Street is undeveloped on the north side, has opportunities for business development on the south side. And we tried to make the trail or the designing of this trail so that it allows users to passively walk back and forth on either side, because we think it's important. We also recognize that in 2011, Commercial Street was reviewed as one of the key areas that needs some attention for the development of the city. And so integrating the walkway on the north side of the tracks and the walkway on the south, creating the trail, allowed that opportunity to really reflect what the possibilities are for Commercial Street on the west end. This perspective kind of gives you a good indication of that transfer from trail material, the asphalt, to more of a urban concrete trail assembly with the white lines paralleling the tracks. It also indicates or shows the connection of the historic contents between the historic schoolhouse, the museum on either end of this important area. It also allows that connection to Main Street through the walkways from the trail to the downtown Main Street. I think it illustrates those very nicely. And there's just I think that I believe that it allows the finalization, if you will, of this improvement for Commercial Street. It seems a little undeveloped at the moment, and this trail just really allows future as well as proposed improvement. So the west end, the connection to Dayton, is kind of the heart of the project, if you not the project, but of this end of the trail. It really allows a connection to the museum, that Main Street connection. And with the central kiosk at the mid block, it allows those improvements on Commercial Street, parking for the trail, or pretty much any downtown user, but primarily it's set up for the trail. ADA parking to allow, which the museum does not currently have, at least I'm not aware of, but it allows that opportunity to serve all, as well as the true connection with the central core. You'll see in these drawing that there's some dashed lines showing what future improvements to the east may look like, and it's listed that way. But I believe the key elements are that we needed to provide a spot that is central to Dayton, and it allowed that improvement. If you want to go to the final slide, Brian, there we go. You'll see how it's related to the museum. It's related to the park, the historic caboose that's put in there, and improves the crossings of the track, the streets, as well as allowing that connection to Main Street. So you'll also see in these illustrations the signage that we're talking about, and these would be along the entire trail at different locations, whether it's a mile interval or whether it's coming to a change in the trail. Those are the context that allow the user to know that they're moving down the trail, but there's a change coming up, and therefore it's the safety component that we're looking for the people to know when they're on the trail and when they're not. With that, there's a lot to go through. There's a lot more information in the details that are part of this set of drawings that Brian has talked about. So please download them, make your comments, and it helps us understand what we need to do for integrating all your thoughts, because this is the community. It ties two wonderful communities together through the valley. It brings that both that cultural and historical context together, and it just is a great opportunity, I think, as you heard earlier on. So with that, Brian, I'll kick it back to you.
Thanks, Ken. That's going to wrap up our discussion of the plans. Again, we've said this a bunch of times, but to get the full set, please download them from the Port's website. Also, there's an option on the Port's website for comments or questions to be submitted through, I believe, May 12th. So if you have an opportunity to look through the full set, please provide your questions and comments. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Glenn Mendel, who's one of our steering committee members, to discuss some of the expressed concerns we've heard and maintenance of the trail. Thank you.
Thanks. So over the last 2 or 3 years, the public and adjacent landowners have expressed many concerns and questions regarding the proposed trail. Those concerns and questions have been summarized, and you'll see them here in a moment on the slide. There you go. But a more detailed draft summary with responses is posted on the Port's website. The posted responses are compiled from a variety of sources to provide a draft working document. This document should be viewed as a work in progress. We will continue to add more information as it becomes available, and we welcome your input. We have guest panelists here tonight that can help provide responses and give their perspective regarding some of those listed concerns and questions. But there is not enough time during this webinar to go over each listed concern and question. The next speaker is Tim Schultz with the Washington Department of Agriculture Pesticide Compliance Program.
Good evening. I'm Tim Schultz. I'm the program manager for the Washington State Department of Agriculture Pesticide Compliance Program. Thank you to the Port of Columbia and others for inviting the Department of Agriculture to join tonight and address some of the pesticide application questions that may come up or would need to be answered in the future. As far as the pesticide compliance program, we're a state agency that enforces state and federal pesticide regulations. We currently have 14 field staff scattered across Washington state who do routine inspections and investigations into complaints. We have 2 staff based in the Tri-Cities area that service the Walla Walla and Columbia County areas as needed. Of the literally thousands of pesticide applications that occur every year in the state of Washington, a few come to our attention that we have to address, but in most part, what we expect of pesticide applicators is to use the pesticides according to the label, follow the rules and regulations that are in place. If people have questions about some of the rules and regulations, they can certainly visit the Washington State Department of Agriculture website. And we have specific things on there and links that you can look at. It doesn't matter if the pesticide application is being performed agriculturally or by a commercial company for a landscape, by a homeowner, or for a right-of-way. Our expectation of the Department of Agriculture is that everyone follows the label and applies the product properly. We have other trails and rights-of-way areas in the state of Washington that have a fairly close interface to agriculture. And as far as we know, our experience with the complaints coming out of those areas are minimal to almost zero in some areas. Some people may not understand the agriculture in the area. And so that's why it's important that as this trail is being considered, to work with the agricultural entities to have appropriate signage so that trail users, if they're not familiar with the area, are aware of the agricultural practices that the trail might be abutting. There can be odors, dust, different types of application equipment. And so it would be good to have appropriate signage at key locations to inform the user of the trail. Also with pesticide applications, if it is being done properly, you may have some odors that certain pesticide formulations will have. If a person smells an odor on the trail, it doesn't necessarily mean that a drift has occurred onto the trail or that they're being exposed, but there's an odor that can linger depending on the topography, time of day, inversions, things like that. And again, signage, time of year can help the trail user understand that. We do have the expectation of those farming along the trail to be as diligent as possible. They keep those pesticides on target. The one thing that would be a little more critical for the agricultural crops, if it's involving an insecticide, that does increase the expectations and the need for the educator to be more aware of those on the trail and to have extra precautions in place as they treat those fields. There is one area in our state rule that went into effect in 2017 that if, and it doesn't matter where this occurs, whether someone is walking on the road or on a trail, on a residential property next to a field, the ground application, if it's within 25 feet of that person, the applicator is to pause, assess the conditions to see if the application can continue, or they would have to wait for that person to move beyond the 25-foot distance. If it's an aerial application, that requirement is 100 feet. And so if any fields are done by air, whether it be fixed wing aircraft or helicopter, a little more precaution and observation would probably be needed if those fields are being sprayed by air. So bottom line, in brief, with pesticide applications, they can be done properly. We expect the applicator to keep the product on the target field, not drift onto the trail, and appropriate signage along the trail can certainly help those using it to understand what is going on and what the precautions are that they would need to follow. Definitely staying on the trail and not going into the fields would be a primary requirement. Thank you.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time getting it to forward. I'll keep working on it. Keep going.
Okay, well, one of the concerns that we've repeatedly heard expressed by the public is a need for a maintenance plan. And so we have put together a preliminary maintenance plan, and this is on a per year basis. But I want to underline the word preliminary here. And you can see a summary with weed control, and the information that that's based on was from a Washington Conservation Corps contract that State Parks has for their Palouse to Cascades Trail. There's also an estimate from the Bill Chipman Trail from an average of I think it was 4 years. And some of that data is a couple years old. So the estimate of $4,500 is kind of in between those two estimates. So that's a ballpark. Then we have the garbage pickup and restroom cleaning. This is a revised estimate from what was originally posted, so that this new estimate is now posted on the port's website. And all of this summary here is a brief version of what's posted on the port's website. And then you can see there's litter pickup. A lot of that would depend on volunteers. And for example, the Centennial Trail uses an adopt a mile approach, and all of their miles of trail have been adopted by different organizations to help with litter pickup and other maintenance activities. And then there's some miscellaneous repairs. I won't go through the list of that. It is on the posted one. So if we had a trail in place now or in 2022, we would end up with an approximate $16,000 to $21,000 estimate for maintenance. But you have to use that with a lot of caution, because the trail is not in place and may not be in place for several years. It may also be built in phases. So if you had 1 or 2 phases of the trail, but it's not the full 9.7 miles, this estimate for maintenance is probably going to be well high for what it would take per year. So keep that in mind. This is ballpark figures for now. Consider this a conceptual maintenance plan that lists most of the maintenance aspects that could be expected, with some preliminary cost estimates for now, but not necessarily accurate or appropriate if the trail isn't built for, say, 5 years. The next speaker is going to be Greg Brown with the Blue Mountain Land Trust. He's the Blues Crew leader, and he'll talk about some of their volunteer efforts on trails.
Thank you, Glenn. Hello, everybody. My name is Greg Brown, and I am the founder of the Blues Crew of the Blue Mountain Land Trust. And we have been active in providing and organizing volunteers for the trails in our region since 2018. It was triggered again by our engagement in the regional trails plan. And what I would share with you is we've had a success in organizing volunteers. We've had over 150 individuals donate over 7,500 hours on trails. Now, most of that trail work has been in the national forest, but we've also done trash pickup on the county roads in Walla Walla County. We've worked with the state parks. Actually, we're going up to Field Springs this coming weekend with McNary down in the McNary Wildlife. And so I'm really confident that the Blues Crew can work with the Touchet Trail folks to come up with a organizational plan for volunteer support to support the trash pickup, any maintenance that is appropriate within the skill sets of volunteers. And I think it's an exciting project, and then I hope that we can participate. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, it's my turn again, and I'm going to talk just a little bit more about maintenance. So we've been thinking about this a lot. We have reviewed information from the Centennial Trail. They have a memorandum of agreement between all the entities along the trail. The trail's on a lot of different pieces of land. We've reviewed the Bill Chipman and the Palouse to Cascades Trail, and we've interviewed and discussed state parks personnel. And the way it seems to me is, as the primary landowner, the Port of Columbia would be the agency in charge of coordinating maintenance because we own the land. We have talked with the city of Dayton and the city of Waitsburg, as they also own property that the trail would be on. And so the ports and cities would maintain the portions that are on their jurisdictions and contribute annually for operations and maintenance. We have discussed with state parks the idea of them maintaining the trailhead that is on their portion of the trail. That is not, there is no firm answer, but we are discussing it with them. And then, of course, volunteer groups and civic organizations like the Blues Crew can help. We've also learned that grants can be sought for major maintenance after a certain number of years have passed and more major repairs need to be made. And just to give you a little bit of background on what the port maintains right now, we have a $60,000 a year budget for maintenance at the Rock Hill Industrial Park and at Blue Mountain Station. And those two business parks house 23 business tenants. So we're already supporting the business community through maintenance of assets. Lions Ferry Marina, we budget $20,000 a year for maintenance out of the port budget, plus ongoing maintenance provided by the private operator. So there's a private-public partnership. And that is a recreation facility that serves customers from a large geographic area, bringing outside dollars into Columbia County. And finally, the CWW Railroad, they lease the rail line from the port. So at this time, they are responsible for day-to-day maintenance, including weed spraying. But we have been able to get over $300,000 in grant funds in the past 10 years for bridge repair and other large rail maintenance items. And both a private company shipper and the railroad chipped in matching funds for those maintenance projects. So again, that's a public-private partnership. So just wanted to give you a little idea of what the port already does. Maintenance is not a stranger to us. And so we're confident that we can take care of maintenance and the coordination of maintenance on the trail. So I am now going to turn it over to, we have several guests from other trail communities. I'm very grateful that they have joined us and have been working with us on talking about how trails operate in other communities. So I'm going to turn it over to Lorene McFall, who is with the Friends of the Centennial Trail. Go ahead, Lorene.
Thank you so much for the overview and the opportunity to be with you this evening. I'm Lorene McFall. I'm the Director of Friends of the Centennial Trail here in Spokane. Our organization is 30 years old. We are told that we are the oldest organized state parks friends group in the state park system in Washington. The Spokane River Centennial Trail initial building started in 1989. And for those of you that haven't seen the trail, it runs 39 miles in the Washington area, and then at the Washington-Idaho state line, extends another 24 miles into North Idaho. What's incredibly unique about our trail is that it follows and parallels the Spokane River for its entire path. And it is bookended by beautiful lakes on each end, Lake Coeur d'Alene at Higgins Point, and also Long Lake in 9 Mile Falls in Stevens County. So in Washington, it is in Spokane and Stevens County both. Also unique on the Washington side is that about a third of the trail is in Riverside State Park, another third in the city of Spokane proper, and then out in the valley areas running through the city of Spokane Valley, Millwood, and into the city of Liberty Lake. And so we are all about collaboration. We're all about community. And I think more than ever, what we've learned through the COVID days of this last year is this Centennial Trail was built to be a recreation trail to celebrate Washington's 100th birthday, but increasingly has become a center for wellness, for emotional, mental health, in addition to just the physical recreation opportunity that it provides. It is Class 1 trail for about 95% of it, meaning that it is completely separated from roadway and an asphalt trail. The trail proper is the asphalt and 2 feet either side, and that is what we focus on. We have about 21 different trailheads along its span. There was a question that came in about the Discover Pass. I can tell you here, the Discover Pass is required for parking in Riverside State Park at trailheads there, but in the city of Spokane and in the Valley jurisdictions, the Discover Pass is not needed at trailhead parking. So that was a negotiation that was made many years ago. So moving on, what we do every year, utilizing electronic newsletters and surveys for our members, our donors, our Adopt a Mile partners, the media, and the general public. Our role is citizen advocacy. We're a non-voting member of the Centennial Trail Coordinating Council, which has a 20-year interagency operating agreement. But we are kind of the face of the trail when it comes to PR, getting citizen input and feedback and ideas, and yes, complaints. We're sort of my phone rings with a lot of different calls and emails as well. So we try to be available to our community, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit. What we do every several years is survey our Centennial Trail users. We know that our trail receives over 2 million unique uses a year. And I just wanted to share with you briefly tonight survey results from last year. Who knew that COVID would be upon us, but this was information that we had shared with the public, and we're more than delighted to share it with you all this evening to use it in whatever way you would like. So we'll move through this real quickly to be cognizant of time. We asked folks what the Centennial Trail means to them. Obviously, the larger bolded words were words and responses we received more often, but being a beautiful way to commune with nature, build community, a beautiful resource, critical for wellness. We hear community treasure, a gem, all of the time. Increasingly, we're hearing words like active transportation, getting folks to commute to and from work. It's very important for tourism, but it's very important for residents as well. We asked people to tell us what their zip codes were in the survey. So you can see that we had an enormous cross-section of folks. The 992s are the Spokane area, 990s in the Valley, 838s in North Idaho. We asked folks on average, how often do they use the Centennial Trail? You can see that we have folks, 8% that are on it daily, 7% weekly, 11% a couple of times a year. but increasingly over half are on it, gosh, at least once to 3 to 5 times a week, which is pretty amazing. We asked folks to identify their age group. I think the important thing here is we realize that there are children learning how to ride bicycles, there are families on walks, there are elderly using walkers, there are folks in wheelchairs. This is an ADA accessible trail. It is accessible to everyone, and it's wonderful for us to see a cross-section of use of all ages. How do folks use the Centennial Trail? Many are walking and hiking, many are cycling. We have a lot of folks jogging and running. We do not remove snow in the winter. That is one thing in the downtown Spokane core, Gonzaga, Avista, Riverfront Park, Kendall Yards, the new neighborhood on the north bank of the river. Those are areas that do remove snow, and rightfully so. But as a rule, snow is not removed from the trail. It is a seasonal trail. However, I would say that we have growing interest from many users that this change over the years, and hopefully we can have more conversation, but it does come down to funding and maintenance. One of the nice opportunities outside of COVID is that the Centennial Trail is a location for nonprofit organizations to host runs, walks, and rides. Those haven't unfortunately been held this last year. But what's really unique is through a permitting process through state parks in each of the jurisdictions, organizations can have fundraisers. And we know that about 25,000 people a year come to the Centennial Trail to celebrate a different nonprofit mission and raise good money. We asked folks, when do they use the Centennial Trail? We're seeing a real cross section of both weekdays and weekends. Increasingly, we are adding infrared data collection through technology called an eco counter. We have one currently in the Kendall Yards neighborhood and in the Mission Park area in downtown Spokane. We've recently donated 3 more counters that will be in the other jurisdictions, including the state park. So we'll be in different areas. Who's a runner, who's a walker, where, to get really important data. And I would encourage you through fundraising or donations, they're just over $5,000, but you can get the online data transmission wirelessly and share that. And I think for economic development, that's been a very, very helpful conversation for us. And we realize the data is everything these days. So we're putting a real focus on that. We asked folks where they access the Centennial Trail. For those of you that have come to Spokane, you know you can access it darn near anywhere in downtown Spokane over a 3-mile span. The Mirabou Park area out off of the Pines exit off of I-90, and the Kendall Yards area, the North Bank development opposite of downtown Spokane. Those 3 major areas seem to be the busiest for trailheads, but really nicely broken up throughout the rest of the span in the valley and up in the park as well. We asked folks what would they consider their use of the Centennial Trail to be for, and recreation, health, and exercise obviously leading the way, but as I mentioned earlier, an increase in commuting to and from work. About 5 years ago, the answer for commuting was about 5%, and that's more than doubled now. And we do have a lot of folks that just are out there for fitness training, getting ready for a run, a walk, or a ride. We asked folks what else they do when they're on the Centennial Trail. Are they getting in the Spokane River to canoe and kayak? Increasingly, our trailheads are adding water access. Are they floating the river in an inner tube? A lot of folks are bird watching, wildlife watching, and studying flowers as well. And a lot of folks are fishing. We've asked also about what has influenced the purchases for folks using the Centennial Trail. And you can see anything from fitness trackers to bike racks, clothing, bike accessories, lots of different things. Absolutely nothing, hardly anybody, but there's a lot of interest. And I can tell you the local REI store takes great interest. And unfortunately, they're not right on the Centennial Trail, but we're seeing bicycle shops and restaurants and breweries and cideries, and certainly the Spokane Valley Mall right by the Centennial Trail. There's a huge boon for retail from Centennial Trail use.
We asked folks how much they felt they spent on the items that they purchased in the last year. And we had one gentleman tell us a very expensive road bike, down to just a handful of dollars. In conjunction with their most recent trip, we asked if they purchased food, snacks, restaurant meals, and we got a huge response. All but 4% said yes. And in their opinion, we asked about the maintenance of the Centennial Trail. We'll take good. A lot of our managing jurisdictions do an amazing job. Some outsource their maintenance of the Centennial Trail to different landscape companies. Others take care of it through staffs. I should stress that the management of this trail outside of state parks is in the hands of park and recreation departments in the city of Spokane Valley and Liberty Lake. So those are maintenance staffs that are already in place. In addition to the day-to-day maintenance these jurisdictions have signed up to do and happily take on, each of those jurisdictions also donate $20,000 a year to a standalone Centennial Trail Maintenance Fund. And so that's part of our interagency agreement, growing a kitty of money, if you will, for grant applications. And we were just successful in receiving state funding for the phase 1 asphalt overlay of the Centennial Trail through this last legislative session. We're just tickled. Our Centennial Trail Coordinating Council was able to make a matching grant. Our Centennial Trail Trail Builders Fund did as well. Through charitable contributions that we received as a nonprofit, we were able to offer a $10,000 match to the grant application. So we were just successful to secure funding for 12 miles of 1.5 inch overlay of asphalt. So that will cover the state line to about the Argonne area, the first 12 miles of the Centennial Trail, which we're just excited about. We asked about safety and security along the Centennial Trail. Everything from fair, good, excellent, and poor, obvious answers. We do recommend that folks do not leave valuables in vehicles, no matter where they park, wherever they are, trailhead or not. Not a great practice, whether you're on a trail or shopping or even in your own driveway. But we have realized that by sending that message when we sell printed maps on our website, when we answer questions, that it's just important to do. My phone really doesn't ring about vandalism in vehicles very often, so it's nice to see, but it is an important awareness, I think, anymore, that folks stay on top of it. In addition, law enforcement is provided by the managing jurisdictions. So that's been also outlined very clearly in our interagency agreement. We asked about cleanliness of the trail. Again, good and excellent. We'll take that all day long. Over Earth Day weekend every year, our Adopted Mile partners, as Glenn alluded to, host our Unveil the Trail annual cleanup. So each mile is adopted by a nonprofit or a business or even families. They'll get out and clean their mile. The jurisdictions will pick up the trash bags and dispose of them, but it's a really nice way to kick off a nice clean slate for the year. All of the volunteers that call all the time to get out on the trail are hosted through the volunteer system in state parks because this trail is a state park. So all of our volunteers are vetted and the time and the training is taken care of through state parks. We asked about what portions of the Centennial Trail folks enjoy using most. We got a real nice cross section, of course, of those 3 main areas as well as the North Idaho area. And then we asked about spur trail links. So the Centennial Trail in Eastern Washington here is really the backbone recreation trail. It was the first one that was built. So linking into North Idaho is very important to us. From there, linking to the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes. Back here in Spokane, we have an opportunity, and we're studying now the Fish Lake Trail that will link to the Columbia Plateau Trail, that will link to the Palusta Cascades Trail. So we're thinking cross-state trail here, and it's highly important, obviously, to 32% of the folks in this region already. The Benbird Trail is a trail that comes off of the South Hill in Spokane, goes underneath Interstate 90 into the University District and Gonzaga University area with a major connection there. Children of the Sun Trail parallels the north-south corridor. If any of you know about highway transportation in Spokane, it just goes east-west. Maybe someday it will go north-south. And if so, we're very excited that the Children of the Sun Trail will parallel the north-south freeway that will intersect with the Centennial Trail. And then last, the Appleway Trail out in Spokane Valley. Last, we just asked about needs and issues. Trail, and did get responses about pruning, things back, clean restroom, safety, illegal camping, more water fountains, keeping to the speed limit, keep right, pass left, those kinds of things. So that is the information that we have gleaned, and I appreciate the time to share that with you. Again, we're SpokaneCentennialTrail.org online, and you're welcome to contact me. Contact me through Jenny as well, and best of luck with your process. Congratulations.
Thank you, Lorene.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on to our visitors from the Bill Chipman Trail. Go ahead, Laura and Dave.
Hi there, my name's Dave Mahan. I'm Superintendent of Parks for Whitman County and wanted to share a few of our experiences in operating the Bill Chipman Trail. The Chipman Trail is paved. It's 10 feet wide and runs 7 miles between Pullman and Moscow. And Whitman County Parks is the lead agency for M&O.
He seized up.
Is it me or him? Oh, God. It must be me.
And usually we're able to save money out of that 40,000 annually, unless there is a significant flooding event, which we're prone to having along that corridor, or if there's a planned large maintenance project, then we will end up using some of our money out of reserves. But the 40,000 annually that we receive generally covers all the regular maintenance and operations expenses for the trail. The Bill Chipman Trail is the most heavily used facility that Whitman County Parks operates. The majority of the trail use occurs on either end of the trail in or near the towns of Pullman and Moscow. We also find that most of the litter that we see along the trail is located primarily at the ends of the trail, as that's where most of the usage ends up being. We've also seen that a lot of litter will blow in from the state highway. Since the trail runs so close to Highway 270, we find that we have a lot of litter that blows in from the highway. Also, as you travel away from the trailheads in Pullman and Moscow, the other noticeable thing is that the trail becomes less busy. So the majority of trail use occurring out in between the two towns is mostly cyclists that are commuting to and from work. And that's what makes the Bill Chipman Trail very unique in our county park system, is that although we have many miles of hiking trails and paths in the county park system, the Chipman Trail not only offers recreational use opportunities, but also serves as a transportation corridor between the two towns. As I mentioned, the trail runs parallel to State Highway 270. And so our neighbor to the north of the trail is the State Department of Transportation and their right-of-way. Also running very adjacent to the trail is Paradise Creek. And then to the south of the trail, we have a very wide variety of neighbors. And so anything from, there's a handful of private residences out there. And there are several businesses, large and small. For an example, we have a vet clinic right immediately next door to the Chipman Trail. There's a paving company and a contracting company. It's a very widely, well, there's a lot of different neighbors out there along the trail right away. And so every neighbor has different things that they're concerned about that affects them personally in their business. And so when issues come up, we try to work with folks as best as we can to solve whatever problems that they may be having. And so on the Chipman Trail, we operate with the same philosophy as we do in any of our other county parks in the system. And that is that we want to be the best neighbors as we possibly can to address any issues that come up. For example, every trail crossing that has line of sight issues for driveways and business entrances, we have those mowed. And so we work with our neighbors on getting some of those things done. And then if anybody's got any concerns about weed spraying or weed control, we'll do our best to work with them as well. But we've always had that philosophy of if we have a neighboring landowner alongside the trail or one of the parks, we always try and work with them as best as we can. And so the Chipman Trail has been in operation since 1998. So we're coming up on 25 years. And the trail is a very much loved and appreciated asset to our local community. And I hear from them all the time, and it's very, very loved trail. So I appreciate you folks inviting us here. And I would like to pass it over to Clara from Washington State Parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, my name is Clara McQuarrie, and I'm with Washington State Parks and Recreation, specifically in the Blue Mountains area, which includes the Palouse Cascade Trail and the Columbia Plateau Trail, which spans over 200 miles in Eastern Washington. I was lucky enough to be a part of the planning and development for the Palouse Cascades Trail that started roughly about 6 years ago. The process was very similar to this one, in which we consulted with adjacent landowners, trail user groups, county weed boards, and local towns and counties along the trail. We held public meetings, sent out information, and took comments and concerns throughout the duration, very similar to this process. Some of the concerns were similar to the ones that we've heard expressed about this trail and many others, and those concerns we either addressed or continue to address, and some of the concerns never even came to fruition. Specifically in regards to spraying and farming along the trail, the adjacent landowners did not have any concerns about their ability to continue to operate as per usual. Instead, they were eager to have us do more weed mitigation, which we did and we continue to do. Since then, we have not heard any complaints or concerns regarding their inability or ability to continue their farming operations as normal over the years. As Dave with the Bill Chipman just stated, they work very hard to keep those relationships consistent and to work with each of the adjacent landowners to make sure we're finding some middle ground. As the Palouse Cascades Trail continues to see development and the attendance grows each year, sometimes even doubles in numbers, the local towns are very happy to have the business of the trail users, and they continue to work with us on ways to increase visitation to their towns and to the trail. And our agency strives to meet and exceed the development and management goals that we set each year. We continue to build positive relationships with adjacent landowners, and they see our plans in action each year, and it has calmed many of their concerns that they've had. And we hope you'll see the same outcome with the Touchet Valley Trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara and Dave and Laureen. We do have some questions that are coming through at the end that we'll probably ask you existing trail operators to help answer. So now we will welcome Brett Myers, the Whitman County Sheriff, who will talk about public safety on their existing trail. Are you with us, Brett? He was on earlier. Okay. Oh. All right. So I don't know what happened to Brett. We also have Columbia County Sheriff Joe Helm is with us to talk about their current enforcement on the Dyke Trail and what enforcement on the new trail could look like. So Joe, take it away.
Okay, I guess a lot of the questions that have been presented to me is if I could dedicate resources just specifically to patrol the trail if it were there. And with current resources, as I've explained, we are not able to provide dedicated services to the trail between Waitsburg and Columbia County. However, it is with, as we do with anything, we would respond to all calls for service, whether they be on the trail, within the city of Dayton, within anywhere else in the county. If there's a call for service, the sheriff's office would definitely respond. There has been questions brought to me regarding public access or public safety access to the trail. There's also been questions brought to me about the current trail along the dike, what kind of criminal activity have been presented there regarding trespassing. We do not have very many trespassing complaints. However, we had complaints regarding drug trafficking or at nighttime type of criminal element along those trails. However, we will respond to calls for service no matter where they are at. Several calls that I get pertaining to public safety are about proper lighting. What are traffic guidelines going to be as far as the cross points of the county roads with the trail? What are some of the enforcement action going to be taken on the trail? And a lot of those questions I cannot answer now. As they previously stated, things are only 30% as far as the design studies that have been done. However, rest assured, whether it's a landowner or somebody in need, the Columbia County Sheriff's Office will respond for any calls for service. I have not had a chance to talk with Brett Myers of Whitman County regarding the safety issues along their trail. However, as stated previously, we will respond for calls for service. However, we do not have dedicated resources specifically for the trail. And that's the information I have currently.
Thank you, Joe. We have one of our steering committee members is seeing if they can get a hold of Brett. So we'll still have him jump on if he can. So everybody, please let me know, or Sean, please let me know if Brett joins us. Otherwise, it is time to move to comments from the public. So,
all right.
Yeah,
I'd like to thank all of our presenters so far today for providing all this great information, but also to thank all of the people who have been providing comments and questions so far in our Q&A. There's been some really great ones in there, and if you haven't had a chance, please check that out. With that, we'd like to encourage everyone that has a question or a comment, maybe for any of our specific presenters, to click that Q&A button, and we will try and answer them as best we can live here this evening. Commissioner Brown and I will read some of the questions and suggest potential people who can answer them. And with that, I think I'll just dive right in. Jenny, I had a question kind of directed towards you. Will the final 10% of design be funded if the grant covers only 90%?
So I do not have a concrete answer on that, but what my experience has been, and maybe Brian can weigh in, is that usually when you apply for construction funding, that often the construction funding covers the last piece of design, because then you kind of know how it's going to look in the end. So if Brian has a better answer, I'd be happy to let him answer, but from what I understand, that is how it's handled.
All right, thank you.
And I'll just jump on real quick. That was perfect explanation of the answer. That last 10%, the piece that gets it to basically in a contractor's court to start building it is generally funded at with the funding for construction.
All right, thank you, Brian. And for all the questions that I ask, feel free if anybody has something that they think they can contribute, please speak up. All right, the next question I have is sort of targeted towards law enforcement. So Joe, hopefully you can answer this one. What is the plan for public safety access to the trail, particularly in areas that are not close to the highway or other roads? And I guess, what would a call for service look like in one of those situations?
I guess I can't truly answer that. As far as the planning and designing, that would be up to the plan design of the trail when it comes to public access for the trail. What I can say is, as far as responding to calls for service, the sheriff's office will always respond within the resources that we have for any calls for service. Obviously, if there's an emergency situation, we would like, obviously, the sheriff's office, as well as I'm sure fire and rescue, would like to have access to the trail. But currently, I am not privy to that information or have that information provided to me as well.
Okay.
We
all know.
Tim, I
Go ahead,
I can answer that to a certain degree. Yes, Joe and I have talked about this in the past, and that has been discussed with the design team, in that we do want emergency vehicles to have access. You know, right now, if something happens on the railroad right of way, because I don't know if people notice, but there's a lot of people walking on it. They can't reach them. So somehow we would create access for them, but that does not allow other vehicles access to the trail. That's the goal. Thank you.
All right. We had a good question come in. Tim Schultz, hopefully you are still with us from the Washington State Department of Agriculture. If a trail user makes a complaint about spraying, what does the following process for dealing with that complaint look like? And will the farmer need to stop spraying or do anything in particular during that complaint period?
Well, we'll certainly try to answer in brief, and we can follow up later if more information is needed. But as far as what a normal pesticide exposure complaint could look like is, if someone is claiming that they were exposed to a pesticide and they contact us, our first level of inquiry would be kind of try to triage the call over the phone to assess the immediacy of the situation. If they truly got sprayed by an adjacent application, which can happen and does happen, we do address those across the state. We would ask that they find a location where we could rendezvous with one of our field staff. Since our staff are based out of the closest would be out of the Tri-Cities, it could be up to about 2 hours or even more, depending on availability of staff. We would, as far as having the farmer stop, that's not necessarily a requirement. The farmer, if they're continuing to make the application, we would hope that the weather conditions and their application are appropriate, which would mean that they could still continue. We do have a fairly significant number of complaints that come into our offices from those who may not quite understand the agricultural setting and may have concerns about what they're just seeing, or they may be experiencing an odor, which again, as I mentioned earlier, isn't necessarily an exposure. And so some of that information we would try to address in the phone call with them to assess our response as to how that should happen. Hopefully that kind of answers the question in brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and your expertise is greatly appreciated. Who is participating today, if you would like to ask a question of us while we are all here, please hit the Q&A button and type away. We will eagerly await that. As far as prepared questions go, I only have one more question directed for Laureen. Can you speak to any reports of violent crime have happened along the Centennial Trail?
Thanks, Tim. I'm kind of at a loss on how to answer this because I see Norman's question about an article that the Gonzaga Bulldog, which is the campus newspaper, ran about a incident in 2017. I can tell you that in terms of law enforcement on the Centennial Trail, whether that's in the city of Spokane or any other jurisdiction, law enforcement has a direct line to any 911 call. So we encourage folks on the Centennial Trail to call 911 if there's an issue, to call 311 if they see something that's not right for illegal camping as well. That's City of Spokane is handling that with a different phone number. I can't answer the regional crime map. I would just say that the Logan neighborhood, which surrounds Gonzaga University, as well a little bit west is the West Central neighborhood, where the Kendall Yards neighborhood, zip code 99205. That neighborhood, that zip code is the poorest zip code in the state of Washington. What we're finding with the Centennial Trail is at the Gonzaga area, the campus security number is the first phone number that all of the students receive at their first day orientation, to put campus security numbers in their cell phones, and to be aware when they're on campus or anywhere else in the region, to just be aware of their safety. How that relates to the Centennial Trail, I don't have data. I can't tell you that the police have never contacted us or the coordinating council to sit down and talk about a different kind of trail safety or a different kind of public safety. And I've been doing this for almost 10 years. So the law enforcement and security and safety aren't any different than any other location. So we just appreciate, and we just encourage folks to use the buddy system and keep their eyes and ears open. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does, definitely. It also may be worth mentioning that the population estimate for the greater Spokane area is somewhere around 500,000. Lorena, another question for you as well. Can you touch upon the homeless population on the trail? One concern that's been expressed from locals is the homeless transient population becoming invasive with the community due to the trail. With Spokane already having an established homeless community, does this population pose problems along any parts of the trail?
I would say that because the footprint of the Centennial Trail is along the Spokane River, that it is a fantastic place for fishing, for canoeing and kayaking, and it's a really great place for illegal camping. So it's very, very frustrating and a growing concern here because of the access to all of the services that Spokane provides, from homeless shelters to being the post office box where monthly checks come in, where that audience and those residents receive them. So this isn't probably the time or place to answer that, but I can tell you that it is a Western US issue. We have seen it grow with COVID. And we're finally seeing Mayor Woodward here in Spokane really pushing the regional jurisdictions to get together and get a regional answer for homelessness, not forcing just one city over another to take it on and provide those services. But yeah, folks do enjoy camping on the Centennial Trail. They also enjoy camping all over on intersections and parks, and the Centennial Trail is not unique. They're in a lot of places right now, which is very unfortunate, and try to provide compassionate answers and connect folks with services and understand that many people are in just dire straits, that it is not probably a life anyone would necessarily choose. So Spokane is a compassionate community, and I think that that's well known with this population.
All right.
Hey,
Thank
Tim,
you,
I'd like to, could we ask Dave if they have any issues with homelessness on the Bill Chipman Trail?
Yeah, so the trail's been around for almost 25 years and has never had any regular negative impacts from homelessness along the trail corridor. However, in the last 2-3 years, we have noticed maybe 1 or 2 homeless folks a year might spend a night or 2 out there. And it's a fairly new thing that we're seeing. And a lot of that, most of that activity occurs near the Pullman end of the trail. And so those calls are handled by Pullman PD if need be. But the other thing I would like to add is I think it's a benefit for the Bill Chipman Trail that the state highway runs directly parallel to the trail. So you can just about drive from Pullman to Moscow and see the trail for the entire way. And so there isn't a whole lot of hidden secret places for folks to set up a camp or anything like that out on the Chipman Trail.
All righty. Jenny, we actually had another question for you. The maintenance plan seems to include spray for weeds only once annually. Isn't twice annually what is needed? The trail behind the port has been noted to have maintenance needs that have not been met.
Okay, so two different issues here. The future trail spraying, it kind of depends on what you spray. In our industrial park, we have areas that we use more of a sterilant than a short-term weed killer, and those places do not need to be sprayed more than once a year. Places that we would not be able to use a sterilant may need to be sprayed twice a year. So that's a good point and will be part of our ongoing discussions. Regarding the trail behind the port office, I think it's important for people to know that trail, I had a volunteer come and ask me if they could put a trail on the hillside. And I was surprised. There's kind of old cattle trails and an old road that goes up there. But I agreed that if that person wanted to work on it and do it themselves, they could. So what's happened is that the trail has become popular. And so now the poor volunteers are having a hard time keeping it up, which I completely understand. So last fall, for the first time, the port did pay to have some spraying or some trimming done along the trail. And we this year are going to have more of a strategy for trying to keep the weeds down along the edge. So that one kind of took us by surprise. It definitely took us by surprise by how popular it's been. So we did get a donation from a local business last year, a large donation that covered more than half the cost of the maintenance, but we will have to be coming up with a more concrete plan for that one moving forward. But we're very glad people are enjoying it.
All righty, thank you. All right, we have a question for our Anderson Perry and SPVV design crew. What are some of the things that could be installed or implemented to lessen impact of foot and general traffic on the residential homes across from the Dayton end of the trail? Brian or Kevin or Ken?
Yeah, so sorry, I was trying to think. Essentially, the Dayton end of the trail is acting as a public sidewalk almost. So that, I guess that's a question that I'll have to look into and kind of think design potentials may be as we go through the process. There are different ways to treat sidewalks adjacent to residences, but as we're in, I'm thinking in the city of Dayton, we'll have to take a look at that.
Okay. Ken, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. These kinds of specific residential questions are taken care of generally on a case-by-case nature. We like to take a look at it. Currently, we're working on an extension of the Centennial Trail, and this exact question came up. The reality is that we just want to look at each individual's access point and the proximity of the trail, and make sure that there's plenty of visual line of sight and clearances associated with that. So I'm assuming this is on the West Commercial Street section and not necessarily the East Commercial Street section, east of the Touchet River. So Brian and I will take a look closely at that and how that impacts that particular leg of the trail.
All right, thank you. So while I have you guys, the next one's kind of a big one, so bear with me. Have you looked at alternatives to using asphalt as the trail's material? Many rails and trails in the Midwest use an alternative mix of fine gravels and bentonite. This results in lower costs and less maintenance. Asphalt is not permeable, and if the base is not prepared properly, you will see freeze-thaw or root damage and higher maintenance costs. Gravel mixes used appropriately are less expensive, easier to maintain, and very rideable by all styles of bicycles. The Walla Walla Valley and the extended region has the potential to become a premier area for cycling. Low traffic roads with interesting terrain are very appealing to the cycling community. So I guess, what are your thoughts on using gravel or different materials other than asphalt?
Brian, you want to, I'll jump in real quick while Brian's coming online. Right now, the current asphalt is probably based on the local availability of a product and material. I don't disagree that the gravel aggregates with the fines associated with that are very manageable. In fact, the Hiawatha Trail is primarily set up of a gravel base. However, in its nature, in its very rural nature, it's a little bit different based on that. But Brian and I will again take a look at that in more greater detail. But generally, it's about the availability and the value engineering needed for what's happening in this region.
And I'll just add on, and Ken hit it on the head, but making sure that the trail is accessible for all users. So making sure that whatever rain. So
All righty. Next up, we have a question for Dave. We had a question about human waste and waste paper being a common problem around camping areas. Maybe Clara can also touch on this one. Have you seen this issue out in your area?
Out along the Chipman Trail, no, we have not. And I think that has a lot to do with just that as far as homelessness, we may see one or two folks pass through. We don't have an issue with any type of encampment or long-term camping, which is where I think you would generally see a lot of what's being described there. But as far as our corridor, no, we have not seen anything like that. And our staff does a twice a week litter sweep. So we usually try and do our best to keep up with keeping those things picked up best we can.
All righty.
And on the Palouse to Cascade and the Columbia Plateau Trail, we only see those types of issues in the remote locations where we don't yet have services. So adding services is a really big part of that.
Okay. Very good. We have a question for Sheriff Helm. You mentioned little or no complaints of loitering or vandalism along the Dyke Trail. You did mention reports of drug activity along the trail. Is there an increased number of reports along the Dyke Trail compared to reports of drug activity in other parts of Dayton?
No, there are no increased reports of drug activity on the Dyke Trail compared to other parts of Columbia County. It's just one of those that is a common occurrence that occurs, countywide. It's more of a thoroughfare where obviously nighttime, late night hours, it's been known to be an area of trafficking for those to avoid law enforcement. But other than that, there's not been an increased calls of drug activity on the Dyke compared to other areas.
All right, thank you. Were we ever able to get Brett back on? Jenny?
I've been watching and I haven't seen him log
Okay,
in.
alrighty. Well, with that, we are out of questions for this evening. We'll be sure to follow up with all of our questions from this evening, also in the Q&A as well. To be sure, so be sure and check the port website over the next few weeks for those. And with that, I will turn it back to Jenny. Oh, wait, one more. Go figure. We have one last question here. Why not charge a user fee for the trail like the Hiawatha Trail instead of expecting taxpayers to foot the bill? We have to pay for fishing, hunting, and vehicle user fees. Anybody can jump in.
I don't even really know how to answer that. I think the Hiawatha Trail is pretty special from what I understand.
Can I step in on that, Jenny, since I've
Yeah,
been
go
on
ahead.
the Hiawatha Trail? The Hiawatha Trail has a private operator, and the fees that are reflected are largely for bicycle rentals and bus transportation to support the work that the private operator is doing that services that trail. The trail is a wonderful, fun ride in one direction because you can ride a large distance, mostly downhill. And at the end of the trail, you've either bought yourself a bus ticket to get back, or you're going to turn around and ride uphill, or start at the other end of the trail and ride downhill back. But it is a long ride, and there's a private operator involved there, and that's where the fees come in for the Hiawatha Trail.
All downhill. That sounds kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Going once, going twice. Any last questions? Alrighty. So yes, once again, be sure to check the port website over the next few weeks for written responses to all of these questions here tonight. And I will turn it back to Jenny.
Okay, so I just want to thank everyone again for participating. I'm going to turn it over to Sean Milligan, our third and final port commissioner, to talk about next steps. And I want to encourage people, if you feel like your questions have not been answered, send them to the port, send them through the portal on our website, and our team will be working to answer these questions over the next couple weeks. So Sean, go ahead.
All right, thank you all for, first, thank you. I want to thank you all for participating and listening here tonight. I recognize that this meeting format doesn't meet everybody's expectations, but as far as providing a lot of back and forth commentary, but the purpose of this meeting really was just to try to share a lot of information. I hope that you've seen that this meeting has felt to me a little bit like maybe drinking from a fire hose a little bit. We've had a lot of information presented, but there's as much as we've presented that we've only been able in the time frame to hit some of the highlights. So as been said several times throughout the evening, I do encourage you to visit our port website to peruse in greater detail some of the information that has been developed by Anderson Perry and the landscape architecture firm, as well as some of the answers to questions that have been developed by the Trail Steering Committee. I also encourage you to leave your questions and comments. The type of comments that will be most useful to Anderson Perry moving forward will address specific aspects of the trail, but you're certainly welcome to weigh in with opinions on whether you like it or don't like it or whatever. But we will be collecting comments via the website until May 12th. The commissioners and the steering committee members are committed to reading and responding to each question or comment that is submitted. And we will use that feedback for the commissioners to give some direction to Anderson Perry and the landscape designers as the design progresses. We are at 30% right now, which is still early days, but it's a critical position for any future design changes before design work progresses further. So this is why we felt it important to have this public meeting to present the information that we have generated to date and solicit comments and suggestions to help us refine our focus and make this even better than we would otherwise. As I think it's been mentioned, the design work will continue to the 90% stage, which will be complete just a little bit later this year. And anyway, thanks again for your participation. And with this, I think this brings us to the conclusion of our meeting, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you, presenters. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, steering committee. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Jenny. Good job.